You know, for the longest time, it's felt like the absolute best AI was locked up in a fortress, right? Only a few big companies had the key. But what if someone came along and just cracked the code? Well, that's what we're talking about today with Deepseek, a model that really shook things up.
And that really gets to the heart of a huge debate in the AI space. Is the most powerful stuff really locked away from the rest of us behind corporate walls?
Okay, so to really get this, you have to picture two different worlds. In one corner, you've got the giants. They build these incredible, powerful models, but they're completely closed off. It's like a walled garden. You can use their tools through an API, but you can't see how they work. Then in the other corner, you have the open source world. It's all about sharing code, collaborating, and building together. The only problem? For a long time, the open source models were always playing catch up. Just a little bit behind in performance.
But that was all about to change. That gap was about to get a whole lot smaller. It was time for a new challenger to step into the ring.
And here it is, Deepseek. I mean, this thing just appeared on the scene, in a world totally run by the big players, and it did something pretty amazing. This wasn't just another open source model. No, this was built from the ground up to be a powerhouse, ready to compete head-on with the best of the best.
And look, this wasn't just talk. The people who made it came out with this incredibly bold statement. They basically said, this is a turning point. We're showing for the very first time that an open model can actually rival the top closed models. I mean, that's a massive claim to make, but they brought the receipts.
And here are those receipts. Take a look at this. This chart is a performance test on a really tough coding benchmark. That first bar, that's a top model from OpenAI. And the second one, that's Deepseek. It didn't just compete with it, it actually beat it. This was a huge moment. This was the open source community saying, hey, we're not just catching up anymore. We can actually lead.
So the big question is, how on earth did they do that, right? How does a smaller team, without the insane budget of a tech giant, pull this off? Well, the secret wasn't about building a bigger engine, it was about building a much, much smarter one. So let's pop the hood and see what's going on inside Deepseek.
Okay, this is where it gets really cool. On the left, you've got what's basically the standard AI brain, the classic design everyone was using. But on the right, that's Deepseek's version. You can see they didn't just bolt on more parts to make it bigger. No, they did something way more fundamental. They actually swapped out some of the core components for something totally new.
And it really comes down to two major upgrades. First, they built a much faster way for the AI to pay attention, something called MLA. And second, they used this team of experts idea, which is called MO. And trust me, these aren't just some boring acronyms. They are really clever fixes for some massive problems in AI.
All right, let's start with the first one, MLA, or multi-head latent attention. Just think about how you read a really long book. You don't go back and reread every single page every time you start a new chapter, right? Of course not. You keep a kind of mental summary in your head. Well, that's exactly what MLA does for the AI. Instead of constantly reprocessing its entire conversation history, it creates a super compressed summary. And the result? It's way, way faster, especially when you're having a long chat.
Okay, so the second piece of the puzzle is MO, which stands for Mixture of Experts. Now, the old way of doing things was to build one single gigantic AI brain and try to teach it absolutely everything. Math, coding, poetry, the whole shebang. It's not very efficient. MO is totally different. The hospital analogy is perfect here. You wouldn't go to your family doctor for brain surgery, right? You'd see a specialist. That's MO. It creates a whole team of specialized expert AIs. So when a math problem comes in, the system is smart enough to send it straight to the math expert. It's a genius way to make the model way more intelligent without making it ridiculously expensive to run for every little thing.
So let's put it all together. MLA makes it fast. Mo makes it specialized. And when you combine those two things, you get an AI that's smarter, not just bigger. And that intelligence, well, that unlocked their next brilliant move.
And this is where it gets really fascinating, what this new efficiency allows them to do. It's this process called knowledge distillation. Now, that master professor teaching a student analogy is spot on. But think about how a great professor teaches. They don't just give you the answer, they show you their work, right? They explain how they got there. That's what the giant teacher model does. It doesn't just spit out an answer, it shows all of its reasoning, all the possibilities it weighed. And the smaller student model learns to copy that whole thought process. It's learning how to think, not just what the final answer is.
And the result of this is just wow. I mean, they started with this absolutely enormous 671 billion parameter teacher model, a true giant.
And then, using this teaching method, they were able to pour all of that knowledge into a whole family of much smaller student models, some as small as 1.5 billion parameters. So what does that actually mean? It means that, for the first time, you could get top-of-the-line AI performance without needing access to a government-funded supercomputer. It put incredible power into everyone's hands.
So by not only innovating, but also sharing that innovation, they completely changed the game. It was a massive signal to the entire field that maybe, just maybe, the future of AI could be, and maybe even should be, open for everyone.
So at the end of the day, what DeepSeek accomplished was pretty historic. That massive gap between the closed-off corporate AI world and the open-source community, they shrunk it to the smallest it has ever been. They proved, without a doubt, the game-changing ideas don't have to stay locked behind closed doors.
Which, of course, leaves us with one last really exciting question to think about. DeepSeek kicked the door wide open. They showed everyone what's possible. So, who's going to be the next one to walk through it?